I informed my spouse the good news of my pregnancy one night, overjoyed. However, he reacted with tremendous force. I opt not to have a family. An abortion is what you need. His angry expression was one of screams. In response to my refusal, he grabbed my neck and strangled me. As he rushed away, I fell on the floor, bewildered. I felt a spark flare within of me at that very second. He had no clue what was about to happen when I got my vengeance. Hi, I'm Sarah, and I'd want to tell you my experience. It's a journey that started with despair and ended with empowerment. I was 29 years old, residing in Austin, Texas, and employed at an information technology business when it all began. The future seemed bright. My career was my life's work, and I was driven by ambition. I met my boss, Marcus, at that time. At 33 years old, he exuded an air of self-confidence and charisma. He became my mentor after I admired him. Everything seemed ideal at first. Thanks to Marcus's constant support and encouragement, I was able to advance in my career at the organization. I felt appreciated and unique because of him. Our workplace relationship grew into a love one after a few months of tight collaboration. Finding someone who understood me on such a deep level was like finding my soulmate. We became inseparable when our dinners became lengthy discussions about our hopes and ambitions. I was elated when Marcus offered to marry me. I said yes without hesitation since I assumed our paths were intertwined. It was the most gorgeous wedding I had ever seen, and I felt incredibly lucky. Unfortunately, reality set in not long after the honeymoon period ended. After we got back from our vacation, Marcus started acting differently. His wish for me was that I give up my career and devote myself to being a stay-at-home mom. "I want you to be at home, taking care of our family," he stated one evening over supper. I felt perplexed. I recall thinking, "Marcus, but my job is wonderful." I argued that it was my profession. "It's not that I don't value your work, Sarah," he responded, maintaining a composed yet assertive tone. "I just want to provide for you and give you a traditional life." I believed he was watching out for us, so I agreed to quit my job to assist him. It occurred to me this is what marriage is about: sacrifice and love. Therefore, I gave up on pursuing a career in favor of a life centered around my loved ones at home. I was ecstatic at the beginning. I did the decorating, made his favorite foods, and laid the groundwork for our future. However, I soon observed a change in Marcus's demeanor. His attitude grew icy and uncaring. I felt like my efforts around the house were underappreciated and that he hardly praised me. Rather than being the loving spouse I had fallen for, he behaved more like a dictator, demanding that I give in to his every demand. I had a burst of enthusiasm one day, maybe 3 months into our marriage. Since I hadn't gotten my period in a while, I started to wonder if I was pregnant. I was so anxious that I went to the store in a flash, purchased a test, and then waited. My pleasure knew no bounds when the test confirmed my pregnancy. In my mind, I kept thinking, I can't wait to tell Marcus, seeing the joy on his face. I made him a romantic meal that night, setting the table with candles and his preferred wine. I was over the moon when he returned home. "Marcus, I am overjoyed to share some great news with you," I excitedly announced. "I'm pregnant." In a second, his face transformed. Instead of the joyful sound I had anticipated, there was a bone-chilling stillness. He lost it at last, asking, "Are you saying you're pregnant?" "No way, I'm not having a kid." I was caught unawares by the fury in his voice. "I don't understand what you're saying, Marcus. What incredible news. We're expecting a child." Despite my best efforts, he would not budge from his position. "Yes, I'd say I don't want a kid." "Hey, Sarah, it's time to get an abortion. Right now." I was paralyzed with horror as his voice raised. This part of him was completely new to me. Out of sheer shock, I shook my head. "Marcus, I am unable to do that. Here we have our offspring. Becoming a father is something you desire, so why aren't you interested in it?" With fury in his eyes, he advanced toward me. "You're not sharing. It is entirely on you." Then, in an unreal and startling moment, he firmly grasped my neck and squeezed harder. Darkness enveloped my eyes, and I gulped for oxygen as panic washed over me. My next recollection is of lying on the floor, struggling to catch my breath. I was terrified and confused, and my pulse pounded as I realized he had departed the house. My body trembled with agony and emotional conflict as I sat up, overwhelmed by both. I was terrified and completely alone. I couldn't endure being there. For my own protection, I had to flee. As I trembled with nerves, I gathered a few necessities and headed to my dad's house in Detroit. He was the unwavering rock that I could always lean on, and he was also the prosperous chief executive officer of a manufacturing company. My dad was taken aback to see me when I showed up at his residence. "Stella, what transpired? You look pale," he shouted as he hurried over to be by my side. My voice quivered as I related the horrific events to Marcus. "Such you would subject you to such is unbelievable to me. You ought to have so much more," my dad replied, his face seeming sad. "I will lend you a hand. We will investigate this thoroughly." My dad called a private investigator that night while I sat with him. He spoke with conviction, demanding to know Marcus's true intentions. As we got ready to find out the truth, I felt a combination of dread and optimism. I had no idea that the news we would receive would alter the course of history. A dark secret that the guy I loved previously was keeping would break my heart and set my soul on fire. An odd feeling of determination washed over me as I watched the rain pour outside the window. Reclaiming my life and gathering the resilience to confront whatever was ahead became my unwavering goal. I wouldn't have to face the unknown ahead on my own anymore, even though the path was unclear. I was prepared to strike back if I found out Marcus' true intentions. Seemed like an eternity passed during the following days. Even though I sought solace in my father, James's company, the memory of Marcus continued to torment me. Every step along the way up to my escape was a mental replay in which I questioned everything. How could the person I cared about become a monster so suddenly? The private eye my dad had hired contacted me 3 days after my arrival. "Sarah, I have some information about your husband," he began, his voice measured and solemn. My heart started to pound. "What did you find?" "His whereabouts and conversations with coworkers have been monitored by us. You should be aware of this. His secretary, Emma, is the object of his infidelity." His remarks hit me like a brick. As I tried to process the shocking news, I inhaled deeply. "An affair? At what point did this begin?" "As far as we can determine, it all began approximately 1 month following your wedding. It seems like they're up to some dubious business together, and they've been seeing each other frequently," he said. With pent-up rage building inside of me, I tightened my hands. "What do you mean by questionable activities?" "Rumor has it that they're up to no good in some shady business activities, maybe even a crime. So far, I don't have all the information, but I'll keep looking," he said. "Thank you," I managed to say, attempting to keep my composure despite the emotional tornado swirling inside me. I felt a tidal wave of betrayal. Marcus was involved in something risky on top of cheating on me. I sat down with my dad that night to fill him in on what I'd learned. "My father, I am in disbelief. Emma and Marcus may be up to no good, and they're having an affair." The crushing weight of the treachery caused tears to rise up in my eyes. "He seems enraged, James." "Sarah, it is not acceptable. Something must be done. Whatever he did to you deserves retribution." In a state of conflicting emotions, both terror and determination, I nodded. "Let me get a divorce, Dad. I will not stand by while he gets away with it." To further explore my alternatives, I scheduled a meeting with a lawyer for the following day. A newfound confidence settled into my bones the moment I set foot in the legal firm. I had evolved from a docile wife into an independent woman who was eager to take control of her life again. Sarah was a compassionate and understanding lawyer. "Listen, Sarah, I've heard your tale. It seems like you've had quite a journey. We need to gather evidence of Marcus's infidelity and his illegal activities," she continued, her worried expression clearly conveying her worry. "The results of a private investigation are already in my possession. I broke the news that he has been following Marcus and that we have reason to believe he is up to no good with his secretary." "Very well. This will help bolster your case," Sarah said. "Please document everything that has transpired and supply me with any evidence you may have. Get off your behind and live your life to the fullest." Leaving the office, my resolve was stronger than before. I would not rest until I had gathered proof against Marcus, exposed his falsehoods, and regained control. My dad and I collaborated extensively with Sarah and the detective to construct our case in the weeks that followed. In addition to emails and text conversations, we also retrieved security footage showing Marcus and Emma's hotel meeting. The more proof I found, the more determined I became to face Marcus. Marcus, meanwhile, has been attempting to get in touch with me. There were a lot of calls and texts that I chose to disregard. It was too soon for me to confront him. My gut told me he would attempt to use his manipulative skills on me again. My dad and I sat down one night to plan our next move. "Are you prepared to confront him, Sarah?" With worry visible on his face, James cautioned that he could respond angrily. "My dad, I truly must. He must understand that I will not back down. I've had enough of being scared," I declared with conviction. On the day of the confrontation, I got myself ready with a racing heart. I thought a neighborhood coffee shop would be a good place to meet Marcus because it was neutral and I could relax a little. In an effort to mask the anxiety I was feeling, I dressed with great care. I noticed him sitting at a table, appearing unexpectedly composed, as I entered the cafe. I waited for him to acknowledge me before I collected my thoughts. There it was. "Sarah," he shouted upon catching sight of me. "It's been my goal to get in touch with you. How about we have a conversation?" As a form of self-sabotage, I inhaled deeply. "Our conversation is necessary. Emma and you are both known to me." I caught a fleeting glimpse of fear in his eyes as his countenance wavered. He asked, "What are you talking about?" while acting innocent. "I am aware of the affair, Marcus, and I am aware that you are participating in illicit activities with her," I stated with a calm tone of voice. He crossed his arms and leaned back. "It's ludicrous. That foolishness is unbelievable. I have evidence, Marcus." With a burst of confidence, I proclaimed, "I'm getting a divorce, and I'm about to shame you." I had practiced these words in my head for quite some time. In a fit of rage, his cheeks flushed red. "Would you really believe that it's possible for you to simply disappear? Miss Sarah, you will come to deeply regret this. What you're about to embark on is completely unknown to you." However, I refused to give in. "Trust me, I'm doing this well. You can't stop me from living my life the way I want it to," I said with a hint of defiance. Shaken yet emboldened, I emerged from the confrontation unscathed. I had held firm when confronted with the man responsible for my emotional and physical assault. Knowing that I had won the battle, I felt a wave of relief wash over me as I walked out of the cafe. For my future and independence, I was prepared to battle. My thoughts were racing with plans for the future as I drove home. It was time to pursue justice now that I had revealed the betrayal. Unbeknownst to me, the path to reclaiming my life would take me through an unexpected battle and even more stunning disclosures. I felt both empowered and anxious after my confrontation with Marcus. At last, I had spoken out against him, but I was well aware that our struggle was far from done. Over the next few days, I continued to collect evidence and get myself ready for the court battle that lay ahead. Whenever I needed a boost, my dad would tell me I was strong and resilient. As I sorted through the material we had gathered one evening, the private investigator gave me an unexpected call. "It seems like you should visit my workplace, Sarah." His voice was solemn as he declared, "I have something important to show you." "What is it?" My pulse pounding, I inquired. "Talking on the phone isn't going to work for me. Please come in at your earliest convenience," he said. On the walk to his office, I felt the knot form in my gut. I kept thinking, what shocking revelation is waiting for me? As I drove, had Marcus become more involved in criminal activity? Inquiries raced through my head. I was met with a solemn expression by the investigator, Tom, as I arrived. I appreciate your presence. It pains me to tell you this, but I've found out something important about Marcus. He escorted me to his office and produced a stack of papers. Marcus and Emma's names appear on these documents, as do their associated financial dealings. Their apparent use of his business as a conduit for money laundering is evident. They're up to no good in an illicit enterprise. Reading the paperwork made my stomach drop. I gasped, this is worse than I thought, as the consequences of Marcus's actions hit me like a ton of bricks. I think this can be very important proof for your case. If you're okay with it, we can report this to the proper authorities, Tom suggested as our gazes locked. With a renewed sense of purpose, I slowly nodded. We can definitely accomplish it. He needs to make amends for all the hurt he's caused me. With Tom's assistance, I was able to gather all of the proof we had against Marcus and Emma. Before approaching the authorities, we laboriously made sure everything was in order. My resolve to reclaim my life grew greater with every passing day. The big day came a week later. Tom and I went to see a detective and gave him the rundown of Marcus's illegal dealings. I could see the detective's thoughts working as he listened carefully. This is serious, he declared. We'll need to investigate further, but I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. Feelings of relief and anxiety washed over me as I exited the police station. Do you think they'd truly punish Marcus? It gave me the willies to think that he would have to deal with the fallout of his actions. Justice was looming, and I couldn't ignore it. Marcus tried to get in touch with me in the days that followed, but I ignored him. Feelings of wrath and terror raced through my veins every time his message alerted me to his whereabouts. Like before, he was probably attempting to influence me. I was determined not to be fooled this time. The day I had expected and feared finally arrived. With a firm voice, the detective contacted me. Sarah, we have collected sufficient proof to proceed. Marcus and Emma will be taken in for questioning. A racing heart surged through me. What happens next? They might face major charges if our probe turns up severe enough. Be ready, things might get messy, he said. I'm ready, I responded with conviction. To turn around now would be a huge mistake. I felt a rush of relief and excitement as I hung up the phone. At last, I could make out a glimmer of hope. No longer would I let fear keep me from speaking up. I had taken charge of my life and was prepared to fight for justice. I had no idea Marcus would be so stubborn. He was crafty and sly, and I could tell he was plotting something. As I readied myself for the impending conflict, an atmosphere of tension pervaded the room. I needed to be prepared for anything he threw at me because the confrontation was about to happen. Anxiety and resolve were my companions in the days preceding Marcus's interrogation. Judgment was still ahead, so I kept my sights set on it. We were ready for whatever that might come our way because my dad and I worked together. Refusing to give in to fear, he urged me to remain resilient. At long last, the detective contacted to let me know that Marcus and Emma will soon be taken in to be interrogated. Even though I knew this time would be different, the prospect of encountering Marcus again sent my heart racing. I had grown out of being the timid lady he had manipulated. It was time for me to take back control. Our father inquired, "Are you sure you want to be there?" while we were getting ready to go to the police station. It might be difficult to see him. Dad, I really must. I must demonstrate to him that I am not frightened, I responded, maintaining a calm voice. I felt a tidal surge of emotions, angst, dread, and resolute determination, as we pulled up to the police station. With an air of seriousness, the investigator greeted us. I appreciate you making the effort to come, Sarah. In a moment, Marcus and Emma will be brought in. My heart was racing as I nodded. Marcus appeared smug while I waited a few minutes for the door to open. Emma, on the other hand, anxious, darting eyes. My anger flared up just looking at them. Marcus continued, "Sarah, I can explain," but his words were hollow and insincere. I burst in and said, "Save it, Marcus," feeling strong and confident. "You've done enough damage already." We were brought by the detective into a conference room where the interrogation would occur. My dad stood by my side as I sat across from Marcus. In Marcus's eyes, I could perceive wrath and rebellion. By the time he managed to restore control, it was already too late. After we presented the facts, the investigator started asking, "Marcus, we have documentation of unlawful financial dealings involving your business and evidence of your affair with Emma. To what extent do you agree with these claims?" Marcus quivered in his chair, his bluster fading. "We have all been misunderstood." He blustered, "I've been framed," but his mask was starting to come off. "Cast off? Is that so?" I moved closer, looking into his eyes. "The decision to betray me and violate the law was yours to make. The truth will no longer be manipulated by you." Marcus, whose rage was building, got increasingly defensive as the detective went on. "Do you honestly believe that you can simply derail my life? Sarah, you are going to learn the hard way that this is incorrect." Fury twisted his features as he yelled, "Have you any regrets?" "I apologize for everything," I said with a steady tone. "A new chapter in my life is beginning. You can no longer control me." Before now, Emma had remained silent, but now she appeared frightened. "Marcus, perhaps it would be best if we simply told them the truth." She stuttered, anxiously checking in with the detective. "No, you're not saying anything." Even though Marcus growled at her, his dread was plainly there in his eyes. He was encircled by walls. The investigator leaned in at last. "Marcus, the evidence is sufficient to move forward with the fraud and conspiracy allegations. Your deeds will eventually come back to haunt you." I felt a wave of victory wash over me as the detective was about to wrap up the questioning. I had stood firm when confronted with the man who had formerly dictated my every move. Afterwards, my dad and I walked out of the police station. "Sarah, you completed it. You were amazing in there," he said, encircling me in a bear hug. "If it weren't for you, Dad, I never would have succeeded." As tears of relief streamed down my face, I expressed my gratitude for your belief in me. Official charges were filed against Marcus and Emma in the days that followed. I felt a fresh sense of liberation as the burden of his treachery started to crumble. I went back to Detroit, prepared to take on my new role as a single mom. I was filled with optimism and joy as I welcomed my kid into the world, knowing that I could raise my child fearlessly. I was ready to make a new life for myself, one that was full of love and joy, and I had taken control of my destiny. Despite the hardships, I learned the value of self-worth and perseverance on this trip. By transforming my betrayal into a driving force for transformation, I had shown myself that I could triumph over any adversity. Knowing that I was finally at liberty made me grin as I cradled my kid close. I had left the past in the past, and now I looked forward to a future where I could aggressively and unabashedly succeed, as I had always